Alright, so first things first. You're going to come to Hondata.com. Going to come over here to Software, Smanager. Click on that. Download. Click here. Smanager S300. Download. Save. And the next thing I want you to do, hop over onto the YouTubes, go to Real Street Performance TV YouTube channel, go over to their playlists, and watch every Jay's Tech Tips video. Watch all of them. Watch all of them.
One of the more common questions.
There's about 40 or so. And then after you watch all of them, I want you to go back and watch the ones you don't understand over and over until you understand them. And if you still don't understand them, I want you to use Google and read up on it until you understand it. And that should take you a good bit of time. And then right here we're gonna install the Smanager. Yes. No, this is the latest. Agree. Yep. Never on the open highway, of course. I don't like shortcuts. And give that a moment. Alright. And where is it? Come on. There we go. Alright, so this is everything that's new. You could look back pretty far, see how far the software has come along. I've had S300 since about 2012, and even in just the last 5 years they've added a lot of new features, so it's always cool to download a new version and then just have a lot more stuff to play with. So as you can see, this does not look anything like my laptop does, and yours is going to look really similar to this. So you're going to want to organize everything. Oh, come on. Basically, I'm going to show you how I set it up. You can organize it whatever looks best for you. So the section sensors, this is just really everything that's going on here. Like, it's everything. It's convoluted though, it's not really good for looking at in real time. So parameters, this is where you're going to be doing a lot of your stuff. This is where a lot of the main settings are. And then tables, you're going to want to get this nice and big. This is where you're going to edit the fuel and ignition settings. Error codes, that's good to have. Usually you don't have this open except for when you got a check engine light. And then display, this is what gives you all of the nifty gauges. So see, it's already kind of looking like my setup. So they give you a little base setup here. So to add stuff, so like, let's see, gauge. So okay, when we have an RPM gauge right here, it doesn't really look too pretty though. So then you're going to go to properties, and then this is where you can really make it look how you want. You can change the needle color, you can change the background colors. It really does take quite a bit of time to set the gauges up. It's just sort of a very time consuming thing. So like background, I don't know, purple. Let's go with that. And it won't always update right away. And yeah, there we go. So I'm already doing it wrong. There we go. Okay, so now it's purple. Purple doesn't really look good. So we're going to go black, because I like black. That really doesn't work if your gauge color is black. So yeah, see now green, that looks alright. See, I like a yellow dial there. red line is red. Where is the text? Oh, okay, so then this is how you're going to edit your text color. So let's go with yellow for that. Okay, so RPM up top, and now we need the labels. Where is that? So as you can see, it is already slightly time consuming just to like set a gauge up and get the colors you want and all that. And I still can't see those. So you're just going to want to play around with these until you have your gauges looking how you want. And if you want more gauges, so okay, and then it updated there. Alright, so that just didn't update right away. So got a nice little RPM gauge going on. And then so you're gonna just do new gauges for all just blanks. And then you're gonna, in here is where you're gonna, oh no, oh come on. Alright, and you're gonna do this and change to the sensor you want. So like RPM, that's a good one. Vehicle speed, that's another one. Where is, okay, boost. Let's see here. Where is lambda? No, not lambda voltage. Yeah, so just there's a lot of setting up to do with this, if you can't tell. Now on their website they do have some pre-made templates you could go get, but I really like doing it exactly how I want it, because then I have everything exactly how I want it. It'll probably really take about a couple hours to get all the gauges set up and get it, you know, everything looking nice and spick and span. Where the heck is it? Okay, I can't find it right now, but you get the idea. Get your gauges up, get the colors how you want. I should have made these fonts bigger so you could see how small the numbers are, but these are kind of more important. The gauges are just kind of fancy. These are really what you want. So then to add more of these, you're just going to go to a new value. So we got now we got RPM right here. Well, they already gave it to you, but same gist. You just go to sensor. Okay, now boom, now we have the battery voltage. Alright, just like that. What else do we want? Ignition advance. Yeah, that's always good. So now we know the ignition timing. So you're basically just going to want to go through and just basically you're going to want to cram as much crap onto the screen as you can, honestly, because almost all of it is useful. Later on I'm going to bring up a really good view of my settings on my laptop, which I already have all, you know, optimized and done up for how I want it. So you'll be able to just get a good idea of a nice organized way to have everything set up and easy to read. So okay, we got a few things going on here. So to load up a calibration, they give you a lot of base calibrations all right here. So they have you know, like stock Integra Type R, B16A, GSR, D15Bs, D16Z6, even B17, B18LS. They have a bunch of stuff for stock, and then they have some tuned setups, and then stock B20, stock H22. So we're just going to go with the stock Integra Type R tune for now, just to load up some stuff so you can see. Alright, so oh, excuse me. Alright, so this is where the magic happens right here. So you got, I know you can view this in 3D. I don't prefer that way. I prefer the 2D. and you can play around with these, make it bigger, make it smaller, whatever works best for your screen size. So you're going to see it says it's a low speed and high speed, and they're different tables. They're basically like Vtec and non-Vtec. So if you're tuning like a non-Vtec engine, then you don't even have to worry about the high speed fuel or ignition tables. And you just stick to the low speed. So you can see the ignition timing here. So it, RPM by the manifold vacuum or boost pressure. It's on naturally aspirated. So if you're going to want to see the boost tables right here, you can open up and get your different bars going on. So now we're up to about 12 psi right there. So then you can see exactly what ignition advance it's running at, where you are in the map. And obviously you want less timing in the boosted area. Now, this is gonna be a whole nother, its own section dealing with this stuff, but just get used to seeing this, and don't be scared of it. It's just your RPM by your vacuum, and then it just pinpoints that. So say you're at really light throttle at 4,000 RPM, and that's how much fuel it's using. Don't worry about the ignition tuning in the beginning. We'll get into that later. This whole part is just all engine off stuff. Like I'm not even worried about what's in the engine bay. This is really just to get you familiarized with the software. So then we're going to get up to the parameters. This is where you're also going to spend a lot of time doing stuff. So I want you to just go through each one. I'm not going to take the time, but they have a really nice help section. So each section has a pretty good rundown on what's going on. I'm not going to go over all of this, but I want you to go through and read each one and familiarize yourself with all of these. A lot of them you really don't have to worry about. So like say you're just doing a very simple all motor setup, like analog inputs, you don't have to worry about boost control, boost cut. You're really just going to be worried about like closed loop advanced, digital input output. You don't need to worry about flex fuel. You don't need to worry about unless you're using E85 or something like that. The fuel compensation, you usually don't have to touch anything in here. Fuel injectors, this is where you would up your injector size and change the dead times, and they don't really have a huge, they got a good selection, but chances are your injector is not going to, like my RC 440s are not here. So you're going to have to, well, that'll be a lot of this stuff I'm just touching on, and it will be heavily explained in a later video section. Fuel trim, so you can do individual cylinder trims, overall fuel trim, cranking trim, throttle tip-in. Throttle tip-in is basically rapid acceleration of the throttle pedal. So it has its own fuel table. So say if you do a full pull and the fuel it's good, it's where you want it, and you start from a low RPM, so like you floor it at 2,000, you go to red line, it all looked good. But say you're at 4,000 and you just punch it and it goes super rich or super lean, this is where you would adjust that. I'm just trying to touch on anything. Like I said, all this is just to get you familiarized with the software. A lot of this stuff is going to be broken up into its own sections later on, where I'm going to heavily go into detail explaining it and what I do. Full throttle shift, gear comp. This is how you would set your gear ratios, so that way the computer knows what gear you're in. It's nifty. This is your idle settings, idle or control valve. You can make it more aggressive, less aggressive. You can change all these. the target idle RPM to coolant temperature. Ignition compensation, you really don't need to use this one for basic stuff. Launch control, this is where this is going to be its own section later. This is your two-step and anti-lag and all that. This is the map. This is probably the very simple section. So you either got a stock map sensor, so you got that checked, you do nothing, or a replacement map sensor. If you can enter in your custom values, I'd suggest getting a map sensor here if you don't already have a map sensor that you're going to use. I personally use the OmniPower 4-bar. It's good for 45 psi, and it's quick select. It works. It's very simple to get it working. Miscellaneous, this is where you're gonna do your miscellaneous settings. So like my OBD1 computer that my Hondata is chipped into is it doesn't have a knock sensor daughter board. So when I run any engine on my Hondata S300, regardless if I have a knock sensor plugged in, I always get the error code for the knock sensor because the computer doesn't have the daughter board, but the Hondata chip is still looking for it. So you disable this here. I also have my ELD wires unhooked, which is the electrical load detector. Just disable that. That would come up as your error codes right here, and then you use this. It'll be red, and you can use that while you're connected to the computer to clear the error code. So you would, disable both of those, save the tune, upload the tune, clear the error codes, and then you're all good. I know some OBD1s don't have the barometric pressure sensor. You disable that right here. Like I said, you're going to want to go through each section, read the help tab. It's gonna help you a lot. They explain it pretty well. Nitrous settings. I personally have never used nitrous, so I've never used these tabs for anything. So I'm not even gonna front and talk about those. This is just notes. This is we just enter, basic stuff. This is really just for you, and if anyone else were to pull the tune up later on. So this is, just notes, exactly what it says. Data logging, this is really nifty. If you have a switch wired in, or you can set it based on parameters, both ways work pretty good. You're definitely going to want to enable it. The computer can record right there about 20 minutes. It's really useful for if you're out on runs and something weird happens and you want to go back and look and see, or even just if everything's perfectly fine, it's good to look through and it breaks it down. Like you can go, I think it's like it has 5 different sections for a whole second, so that'd be about 200 milliseconds apart. So you could really see what is going on. You could see what your maximum boost spikes are, and it's super useful for just looking at runs and all that. Protection, this is the tab that is going to save your engine. Lien protection, like I said, you're going to want to just read up on all of this stuff in the help tabs. But essentially, if your engine is over right here, so like if the load is over, so if you're at over a 1 psi of boost and the wideband reads any leaner than 13.8 for over 100 milliseconds, it's going to just cut all fuel to the engine and prevent you from hurting it. The same thing with boost cut. It's the same idea. If the boost ever goes over what you have set right here, then it'll just cut everything to the engine. This is why I feel very comfortable using all my cheap eBay stuff, because I'm like, the wastegate, could weld itself shut, and the boost cut's gonna save me. I'm not worried about that. Same with overheating. You can override the fan control. So I prefer my fans to come on around 180, and I put the vehicle speed up to 100 miles an hour. So any speed under 100, my rad fan is always gonna come on at 180 degrees. The same with the overheat. What the overheat can do is it'll, this is when it triggers the check engine light, and you can have it do a rev limiter. So if you start overheating, you can have it so it'll hold the, you could set a overheat rev limit. 212 is a little hot for me. I prefer 202. Just because I'd like to, if I'm getting that hot, then something is not going right. And then these are the advanced protections. These are only on the V3 for S300. It's very similar to these regular Lien protections, but there's a lot more you can do to them. So you can do it by RPM and boost levels, and it's just a lot more advanced than, but it's basically the same thing as that. It's just like a Lien protection, boost protection, that type of deal. Rev limits, you really don't want to mess with these unless you know what your engine is capable of, as far as the rods and the valve train and all that. This is a nice one. Fuel, or fuel plus ignition cut. Fuel and ignition cut, this is what's going to give you those fireballs on your rev limiter. The stock type is the fuel cut, so it's more safer to do the fuel cut, but I do the fuel and ignition cut because I'm about that life. You can actually, there's also a speed limiter. So say if someone drives the car other than you, and you don't trust them, you could have it set so like, okay, you can't go over 120 miles an hour or whatever. Secondary table. So you can also run. Oh no, this is for the nitrous. So yeah, there's it has a staged injector option, so you could run 8 fuel injectors if you wanted, and it has a secondary table for the nitrous function. But like I said, I don't mess with nitrous, so I haven't really ever used this. It's built-in security features, so this is really nice. So like an easy one that I did. So it'll turn the engine over, it'll fire for maybe a second or two, and then it'll shut off, unless these are unless it meets these conditions. So like I usually just do my brake switch. So basically you have to hit your brakes and then turn the engine on, and then everything's good. But if you try to turn the engine on, and this only applies to the first start, so that way if you're out driving and you stall it, you don't have to do this. It'll just turn on like normally. It's not like amazing security, but it is better than nothing. Shift light, self-explanatory, but this is how you get the check engine light to flash for your shift light. You usually want to set that like 500-ish RPM lower than your rev limit, but I mean, you could set it wherever you want. Traction control, I have not messed with. Hondata sells a whole traction control kit. It is expensive. It's like almost $600 or $700. It's expensive. I don't ever plan on getting it. It's really for like really crazy drag racing type stuff. Throttle position. This is where you're gonna set your throttle position. Like I said, a lot of this is just touching on the software. It's just very, 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 very generally going over everything. A lot of these things are going to be broken down in future videos with a lot more detail. Throttle position, ignition. This is another one you don't really have to touch. And then everyone's favorite, Vtec. So this is where you're going to enable or disable the oil pressure switch depending on if you have a JDM Vtec solenoid or not. Minimum temperature for Vtec, it has the boundary system, so you can set a range of RPM. I personally don't like that. I like it like this, where it'll just come on at the same RPM no matter what. So like I said, you're going to want to go through these. You're going to want to read the help tabs, read all this stuff, then you're going to want to go through and read it all again, because it's a lot of information to take in. So that is going to be pretty much it for now. I know you guys were probably thinking that it was going to be just diving right in, you know, turning the engine on and tuning it, but really, like, this is, you got to get your foundation first, because you don't want to have the engine on and running funny and be fiddling around with this, reading the help menus, not knowing what to do. You want to have all your gauges already set up. You want to have all your values set up. You want to have an idea of the fuel map and the ignition map, and you want to know what to look for. Like I said, all this, that will be all gone over in future videos. This is just part one of probably a very many part series of how to do all this stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna switch over to the laptop here and just show you an idea, not an idea, but show you how I have my stuff all set up. Okay, so this is how, now we're on my laptop. This is how I have this all set up. So as you can see, this is a lot more organized looking than on my desktop. So it's gonna probably, like I said, take you at least an hour or two to get all of your values set up, get all the gauges set up and looking how you want. And then once you have all that, you're going to want to lock the controls, because if they're unlocked, you're going to be accidentally clicking on and dragging these around when you don't want to. That's annoying. I forgot to show you how to pull these up. These are just text, so you do new text, and then you just change it to the sensor you want, and you are off. Okay, maybe it's not text. I lied. Yes, get rid of that. See, it's been so long since I've set these up, because I've had my gauge set up for a while now. Those must be image. No, okay, that's not right either. Oh man, I'm looking like a noob right here. Indicator? There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So those would be indicators. So then change that so like you want your check engine light right here, mil. So then whenever your check engine light comes on, that's gonna turn red, as in bad. Get that figured out. Okay, so that's how you get these types. So these are just regular values. Yeah, these are just values. Those are indicators, and these are gauges. So those are the only three that I'm using here. Now the controls are locked, you can't mess with any of these. So you're going to want to get a nice setup like this. So it's not exactly like this. You can do it however you want, but you want to be able to see everything. You want your long-term trim, your short-term trim, the air-fuel ratio, your map, your RPM, your gear, your vehicle speed. You want the Vtec pressure, Vtec spool, rev limit, ignition cut, launch control, launch retard, all this stuff. Your rad fan, your fuel pump, engine coolant temperature, intake air temperature, your injector millisecond, your injector duty cycle, your throttle position, ignition advanced, all this stuff. You want all of it. Okay, so I'm going to load up a tune real quick. We'll go with my B16 tune that I've been working on here. So here we go. And like I said, you're going to want to go through, you're going to read the help settings, and that's going to tell you a lot about what's going on. And like I said, we're going to probably go over each of these tabs into a lot of detail later on. All this is just getting familiar with the software. So like I said, once we actually get to hooking the computer in, talking to the engine, setting up all the stuff before you even turn it on, turning it on, seeing what it does on the first startup, and we're gonna get into all that. So this is really just a getting used to the software. I just want you to get used to the software. So that way later on you'll have a good foundation, and I'll be able to just fly through a lot of this stuff and not have to worry about explaining everything and moving very slowly. So that's pretty much going to be it for now. Like I said, just go through, read all the sections, familiarize yourself with the software. I've only tuned this up to 5 psi, by the way, so the 11.9 section I haven't touched it yet. Yeah, just go through, get all your gauges set up, get all your values set up in the display tab. Familiarize yourself with most of the stuff in the parameters. Familiarize yourself with the ignition and fuel tables. And next video we'll get into turning the engine on, and more importantly, a lot of the stuff where you don't even have the engine on yet, which would be like dialing in the throttle position sensor, checking for check engine light codes that are not engine running related. So that actually will probably be a whole nother section, and then the time after that will be actually turning the engine on. And like I said, watch those Real Street Jay's Tech Tip videos. There is so much good information in there that they just give out for free. They go into a lot of detail. They are extremely knowledgeable. I cannot recommend that enough. Other good sources, Evans Tuning. Evans Tuning, they got a lot of really great information. Just poke around. There's a lot of tuning YouTube channels out there that give out a lot of good free information. A lot of it is not Hondata specific, but a lot of the same information carries over. Alright, so now that's really it. Um, Stay tuned. There'll be a lot more of these to come, because as you can see, we've barely scratched the surface here, and there's a lot to go over. So, yeah, stay tuned.